What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about how you can go from a third-string wide receiver to a varsity wide receiver. So the first thing we're going to be discussing here is a press release situation. So as a varsity wide receiver, you're going to be faced with more press coverage, right? And you got to be able to know how to beat press coverage, especially if you know you want to play in college one day. A lot of times in high school, you're maybe not seeing a ton of press, and a lot of guys think like, oh, I really don't need to know it because, I'm only seeing zone, I'm only seeing off coverage, whatever the case may be. You're eventually going to be faced with press, and you got to know how to beat press. And the best piece of advice that I can give you to beat press is you want to operate outside of a DB's frame with whichever move you decide to choose. So there are a million different press releases you could use off the ball. I'm a firm believer that wide receivers don't need to know a million press releases. You need to have about 5 or 6 releases that you're comfortable with, that all look somewhat similar. Be really good at what you do and what you're comfortable with. So this is a great example of operating outside of a DB's frame, right? So how I think of like DBs and impress coverage, I think of it a lot like driving. Okay, I know that sounds a little bit weird, but like think of like when you're driving on a 3-lane highway, right? DB is in the middle lane, which is where you're at, right? You are trying to release to the outside and get to the far right lane. I need this DB to move to the far left lane, right? AKA like the fast lane. So if I want to get him to move off of his platform, get him to jump to the inside so I can release to the outside, whether I'm running a fade, whether I'm running a comeback, whether I'm running an out route, I got to make sure that my feet and I got to make sure that my hips get to that far left lane, because there comes a point where this DB eventually has to commit to what we were doing, right? So this wide receiver does something we call like a triple step release, which is first step of this release is called a kick step. All that really does is just load up your hips and create some explosion so you could get to that middle lane, or I guess you could say so you get to that far lane to move the DB off the middle lane. So he goes here, 1, 2, 3. It's just a simple 3-step release. But you see how his foot is getting all the way to like the top of the numbers, where when he lined up, he was on the bottom of the numbers. That's called getting to that far left lane. That's called stepping outside of this DB's frame and making him move off that platform. Because again, if it's man-to-man coverage, like he doesn't want to get beat on a slant. He doesn't want to get beat on a drag. So that's what we're trying to make it look like right here. So like kick step, 1, 2, 3. It's the same thing, guys. If he was a little bit closer, let's say this receiver doesn't decide to go with that triple step release. Let's say this DB's right up on the line of scrimmage, and this receiver just wants to go with the single step release. He could do the same type of kick step, but that first step could take him just as wide to get that DB to jump. Fellas, you have to get to that opposite lane. You have to move that DB off his platform by stepping outside of his frame and think about that driving lane method. So I'm going to play this again full speed, and then we'll get into some other tips that will help you become a better wide receiver. Now, the next one that we're going to be discussing has to do with catching. But before we get into that, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you guys would like a 2-month-long workout schedule that you can follow, go to that very first link in the description below for our Elite Wide Receiver Training Package. What you'll get access to with our Elite Wide Receiver Training Package is 2 months of daily gym workouts for wide receivers and field workouts for wide receivers. We map it out for literally, guys, 2 months. It's Monday you're doing this, Tuesday you're doing that, Wednesday you're doing that. We also have speed and agility workouts within the plan, and then we give you the exact sets and reps to do, so everything's mapped out, easy to follow. You don't got to think about anything. And we also give you a video example of each exercise and drill so you know what to do and know how to perform it correctly. So guys, if you want to take your receiver skills to that next level, go to that very first link in the description below. Again, very first link in that description below, and that is where you can get our Elite Wide Receiver Training Package. Now, if you're going to be the best wide receiver on your team, you need to understand that you're probably going to be that like deep threat down the field guy where the quarterback is going to trust you to win one-on-one coverage, whether it's off coverage or it's press coverage. And when it comes to an over-the-shoulder pass, there's one thing that all wide receivers need to focus on with their hands. And I'm going to play this full speed, then we'll discuss it. So this wide receiver takes an outside release, got this DB by a step, ball is thrown, but you see how late he is able to flash his hands. So let's talk about that, right? So guys, anytime that we're running stride for stride with the DB, he's not necessarily like looking back trying to play for the ball, because that's very dangerous for him to do. If he looks back for the ball and does not have hands on us and is not feeling where we're at, even if he does have hands on us and he misreads it, looks back, can't see the ball, that's a very, very easy way for us to lose him. And then that's 6 points, right? So he is going to be playing us. More specifically, he is going to be playing my hands. So a lot of times receivers are taught like, oh, you want to always go up and high point the ball. That's not necessarily wrong. If the ball is underthrown, right? And it's like if it's a jump ball situation where you're like in the back of the end zone or the ball is underthrown and slows you down, hell yeah, go up and get the ball, go catch it at its highest point, go up strong, rip the ball away from the DB. But if that ball is thrown over the shoulder and it keeps you in stride, we want to show my hands at the last possible second. You want to catch the ball chest level because I don't want that DB to have any idea of where the ball is going to land so he could punch it out. That's how DBs make their money, man. If you guys show your hands super early and raise them up, he no longer looks back for the ball. He's not threatened by that, and he knows exactly where to punch and knock that ball out. But if you are late with your hands, bam, we could just catch this thing, secure it, and then put that thing away and make the catch downfield. Now, the other reason why you want to have late hands on a deep ball, guys, is when you are running, if that quarterback puts that thing out there and you guys start showing your hands too early, you are going to slow down. Think of it just like any speed situation at all, right? Let's say you're racing somebody who's the exact same speed as you, but you're running with your hands down by your side and the other guy's pumping his arms. He's going to beat you 10 times out of 10, right? So you want to keep your arms pumping until the last possible second so you could catch up to those ones that maybe require you to fully extend or require you to put on the jets to be able to go catch up to it. So guys, over the shoulder passes, your hands need to be late. So we're going to play this again full speed one more time, and then we're going to get into some more route running talk that will help you move on from being a third string wide receiver to a starting receiver. Now, this advice I'm about to give you applies to really, honestly, guys, top of the route, off the line of scrimmage, anything with your route running, and that's honestly going to be, guys, making things look the same, okay? So I call this pairing your routes together or pairing your releases together, and you got to know how to do this. Remember what I said in the very beginning. Receivers don't need to know a million different ways to beat coverage. I think here's the problem with, like, social media these days is that, you got a bunch of trainers on social media, not knocking it. It's a great thing to do. It's great to put your information out there because it's helping kids get better, right? But sometimes I feel like athletes, what they do is they intake so much information that they're actually confused at the end of the day. They're like, well, I could do this release, I could do that release, I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. And they have so much information that it actually turns into just like you're freezing, like you're not even actually applying it. You have so much information in your head, you know so many different releases. It's like, think about it like this. Like, let's say you're a fighter, right? And you're like a boxer and you could throw a jab, you could throw a cross, you could throw a hook, you could throw a rear hook, maybe you're like a kickboxer, you throw a kick, whatever. Million different strikes, right? And if you just practice each one of those strikes one time, are you really getting better? Like, I want you to do 100 reps of the jab. I want you to do 100 reps of the cross. So our jab, our cross is good. Okay, now we have a good foundation. Now we could do a combination, jab, cross, right? Maybe we work our hook 100 times. So now we could go jab, cross, hook. So that's kind of how you want to think of your releases, you guys. You want to be really good at what you do. And what you do should be something that you're comfortable with. And that's how you could start pairing stuff together, right? So this is a great example of like a hesitation, like skip off the ball that he could use on a fade route that he actually uses on a slant route versus a DB who's inside shade press, right? So I'm going to play at full speed. So he comes off the ball, does a little skip, accelerates, gets that DB to overcommit, and then is able to win on that slant. Does that take a little bit long? Yes. I think he could have done without that little crossover right there. I think he could have skipped right off the ball and then gone into his release to make things quicker. But again, you're in the red zone, you're on the goal line. Sometimes things can take a little bit longer to develop. I do think this takes maybe a tad too long, but it's just focused on pairing things together, right? So what you could do as a receiver here is like if you were running like a back pylon fade or even a deep fade and we're in open space, right? You do this little like step with your left foot. We call this a hezzy skip. You step with the left, take a second step with your left, and then re-accelerate, right? You change tempo and then accelerate. Now, how you would run a slant versus inside shade press is you could do something called a diamond release. A diamond release is generally where you take 3 steps at the DB's outside shoulder and outside hip. But if you guys never do a speed release off the ball where you just take off, a disciplined DB is not necessarily going to bite to that. Maybe like a JV guy, freshman guy, maybe a guy's new to the position, maybe he'll bite, but a more disciplined guy who's got high-level skills will not bite because he's thinking, okay, that's a slant. If that's the only way you run your slant, and you don't do that when you run a fade. Like, let's say you're that dude that does that little skip and then you go into the fade. And then when you release out, so when you're doing a slant, you just do the diamond release where you take off with speed. That's 2 different ways to run routes that you should be pairing together, right? So what you could do is try to add them together. So you do that little skip off the ball, then you accelerate for 3 steps because that's more likely to get that DB to bite. It's in his head that when you do that skip, you're doing a fade. Why do you think guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams are so good at fades and so good at slants. Because their fade route, they do that little skip and go. And then their slant route, they do that little skip into the diamond release, and then they cut back underneath. Or they skip and just do a quick little crossover and then go. So, guys, you have to pair stuff together. Disciplined guys will not bite if it does not look the same. So that's the best piece of advice I give to you. Top of the route, it's the same thing. Like, let's say, for example, whenever you're running, like, let's say a corner route, you always cut off of just your left foot. And then let's say you're running a post route, right? What you could do is you could step left and then fake right when you break back to your post. We call that a rocker step. So pairing stuff together is the best way to get into a DB's head, get him confused, and that in turn can get you separation.